All right. It is now 11:05, so let's go ahead and get started because we already lost 5 minutes of our time. But I am so grateful to representatives from the League of Women Voters who have joined us today to give us a presentation as part of our larger series on institutional racism on the North Shore. I would like to introduce Caroline and Cindy. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves a little bit more and share with us your background and then what your plan is for our time today.
Sure, I will start off. I'm Cindy Levine, and I'm currently serving as the co-president of the League of Women Voters in Wilmette. I've been a league member or an active league member, I would say, for the last 3 years. I have been a paying member back since the days when I was actually serving on the Wilmette District 39 school board. But I've been more active in the past couple of years. Professionally, my background is in corporate strategy and marketing. And Caroline Goldstein, who has joined me today, is our advocacy leader for affordable housing. Her professional expertise is also in that domain. And I'll let Caroline introduce herself, and then we'll come back and start our presentation.
Thank you, Cindy. So as Cindy mentioned, I've been a league member for a number of years, the last several years, leading the advocacy agenda around affordable housing. That's actually my profession too. I'm an urban planner. I work for a national nonprofit organization that supports community development and community investment across the country, but I specifically focus on Chicago. I grew up in Wilmette, providing opportunities for people to have the great experience that I've had growing up and living in Wilmette and raising my children here is of utmost importance to me. So I'm really grateful to be able to work with the League on the affordable housing topic, and happy to be with you today.
Great. So we will talk about, as Caroline mentioned, affordable housing in Wilmette, and we'll also bring you up to date on what's happening with boards and commissions that relate to this topic, because there's been some work this summer. If it's okay, I will try to share my screen and bring up the presentation. And please tell me.
Seems to be working.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to spend just a couple of minutes to give you a little background on the League of Women Voters. League of Women Voters is a 100-year-old nonpartisan political organization. And what that means is we work to encourage informed and active participation in government, and we work to increase the understanding of major public policy issues. We do try to seek to influence public policy through education and advocacy. We take action on governmental issues for which positions have been adopted through member study and agreement. The League never supports or opposes candidates or political parties, but we do take points of view on issues that we have studied. Voter education and voter services is a critical evergreen aspect of the League's mission. We work hard to register voters, educate our community on the election process, and we provide resources for voters to learn about all the candidates and issues on the ballot. Our voter services team has worked actively over the past several years with a focus on registering new voters locally. And while COVID limited our ability to do so in person this fall, we're very proud of the fact that in the spring, prior to the March primary, we were able to register over 500 high school students across 5 of the local area high schools. And then more recently, with all of the confusion about voting in this year's election, we had a couple of public presentations to explain the process of mail-in and absentee voting, drop boxes, early voting, etc. We also have an active observer corps that reports on all of the local governmental boards, and we provide detailed updates to our membership and the community at large through updates on our website. In terms of issue-based advocacy, as most of you know, the Fair Tax Amendment is on the Illinois ballot in this election. The League of Women Voters nationally has had a position based on policy for an equitable tax system that is progressive overall and relies primarily on a broad-based income tax. The League of Women Voters of Illinois and locally in Wilmette have been advocating for passage of this amendment. We've held information sessions, posted on social media, and have an issues page on our website with more detailed information. In terms of the kinds of work we do around studies, this year the League of Women Voters of Illinois is revisiting its position on criminal justice, and a study is underway. And each local league will be examining issues including bail reform, equity in policing, and mandatory sentencing laws. And each local league will then be providing input to the state league to determine future advocacy positions. Each year at our local annual planning meeting in the spring, our members have the opportunity to decide collectively the issues that we will focus on. This year and for the past several years, affordable housing has been a focus area for us, led by Caroline. And in the past couple of years, we have also had a focus on seeking to address the process and substance around our village boards and commissions. So we'll talk about both of those topics. And with that, I'll turn it over to Caroline to talk more about affordable housing.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. I believe your group also heard from Gail Schechter last Sunday, who, as you know, is a longtime expert and advocate on affordable housing on the North Shore. So I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to hear from Gail, but so I'm going to just go over some of the basics that you might have. So it might be a repeat for some of you, but I wanted just to make sure we were all on the same page before we jump in. So first, I wanted to start by just defining what affordable housing is. And this is a government definition, but it's really sort of the standard that is used to determine whether somebody has housing that is affordable for them. And so what that benchmark is that you should, in general, an individual should not be paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. If you're paying under than 30%, great. If you're paying over 30%, then it's determined that your housing is not how to you. So that's the benchmark, 30% of your income towards housing. How do we, another term I want everyone to be familiar with is area median income. This is something that is talked a lot about in affordable housing. And basically what it kind of means, what it says, that half the people in the county, in this case, we're going to talk about the Chicago metropolitan area, which is our 6-county region. That's how the government determines area median income. So 50% of people make above that and 50% of people make below that. So in the Chicago area in 2020, the median income is $91,000, and that's for a family of 4. Okay. So when we talk about another term you're going to hear a lot about is low to moderate income, and so what does that mean? Someone is low income if they are making 60% of that area median income. So in this case, that's $54,000, $54,600. Someone is moderate income if they are making about $72,800. So that's some definitions that if you're talking about affordable housing, people will use these terms: area median income and low to moderate income.
And low is 60%? Wait.
Yep, 60% and below.
Low is 60% and below to moderate, and moderate is 80%?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
When you're taking all of those calculations, when we're talking about what's affordable to a low income person, a moderate income person, you go back to that 30% guidance around what you should be spending on housing per your income. So that's some of the more specific calculations around what is low to moderate income and what's affordable housing. So I'm going to share some slides that some of you may be familiar with, an organization called Connections for the Homeless. They're a wonderful organization based in Evanston that provides housing services and support services for a broad range of folks around housing. I'm going to go back. Can I go back to that? Oh, yeah. So they've done some great slides around their advocacy efforts in Evanston and other communities on the North Shore around affordability and really understanding affordable housing on the northern suburbs. So I'm borrowing a couple slides from them because I think they're really interesting and I think give you a little perspective. So you can see here an average public school teacher makes about $60,000 a year. So if they were to spend 30% of their income on housing, they should be spending a little over about $1,500. If you're a police officer, you make about $57,000. So you could spend a little over $1,400 in housing a month. If you're a minimum wage worker, you make about a little over $22,000 a year. So you really should only be spending about $572 a month on housing. And I think we all know that that's tough in Wilmette to find a place where you can live for $572 a month. I just want to give you that perspective about what that means for various occupations and your ability to access housing in Wilmette. I think I'm ready. Oh yeah, thank you. Again, average retiree annual income $36,000, so $904 a month available to you to afford your housing to meet that 30% benchmark. Great. So what's available in Wilmette? I think we all kind of intuitively know this, but it's tough to find housing for many very important occupations in Wilmette. You can see here 1-bedroom units in Wilmette go for about $2,400. So you would need to make about $97,000 a year for that to be deemed affordable to you. 3 bedrooms, if you're a single mother with kids, maybe you want a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, you need quite a large income to be able to afford that in Wilmette. So you can see here, again, I find this is another connections for the homeless slide. And you can see here the challenges that folks have in Wilmette today, existing Wilmette residents around their housing cost burden. So the number of people who are paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. And you can see that the first bar under Wilmette in the light green are owners of their housing that are paying more than 30% towards housing. The green bar, the darker green bar, are owners who are paying more than 50% of their income towards housing. And then the blue bars focus on renters at the same percentages, people who are paying more than 30% and more than 50%. So it is an issue for residents today in Wilmette, in addition to individuals who want to come and be part of our community and enjoy the wonderful quality of life we have in Wilmette. It's hard to come into our housing market. So what is Wilmette doing about it? We have a couple of things that have been going on for a number of years in Wilmette that I'll start with, and then I'm going to talk about some future things. So Wilmette has various housing assistance programs. So from 1979 to 2015, the Village of Wilmette ran a housing assistance program providing rental, mortgage, and tax assistance to residents who were challenged in meeting their housing costs. So Wilmette provided a very small subsidy. I'm going to estimate it about $200 a month to seniors or others to help them pay their income tax or their property tax, to contribute towards their mortgage. It was an application system. It was a sustainable funding source built into the Wilmette budget, the Village of Wilmette budget. In 2015, the village made a transition and opted to put that program into a newly formed nonprofit that is called Housing Our Own. And many of you might have heard of Housing Our Own. So they continue that function, but it is run independently of the village. There's coordination between village staff and the leadership of Housing Our Own, but it's a separate 501c3 that is funded primarily through contributions, donations. In addition, the village has an emergency housing assistance program that is available at $3,000 a year. It's in the Wilmette budget, $3,000 a year to do very short one-time grants to Wilmette residents who are having an emergency need. And one of those emergency needs could be housing. So those are the assistance programs that we have today. Wilmette has also, over the years, supported a number of, a few affordable housing developments in Wilmette. And I think Gail went over these with you last week, but so I'll do this one a little quickly. We have Gates Manor, which is right there in downtown Wilmette, right on Wilmette Avenue, just south of Lake. And it's 51 one-bedroom apartments for seniors. And this was funded by the federal government. It's funded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So there's income restrictions for those units. So to rent those units, you need to be between 30 and 50% of area median income. We also have Shoreline Place, which is on right across from the Linden L station. This is 43 units for seniors and individuals with disabilities. Again, funded through federal U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development resources. So income limits also apply in that building. Again, 30 to 50% of area median income. We also have the Village Green Atrium, which is the building that is on Ridge Road, right between St. Joseph's and the police station. Used to be the curling club for people who have lived in Wilmette a long time. So this one is structured a little differently. These are condo units. It's 35 condo units. And the village set this up to be long-term affordable housing. So when someone buys that condo, the village, there's a deed restriction on their mortgage that allows the village to exercise the right to buy that unit back from the homeowner at a set price, a percentage that is built off of inflation. So there's still, the condo owner can still build equity, but it's limited equity to keep that unit affordable. Now I will note, during the recession in 2008, the units in that property were selling at a rate lower than the rate agreed upon in that deed restriction. So the village has not been exercising their right on this building since that time, because it is happening naturally per the value of those units in the market. If that were to change, the village could reinstitute and bring set the prices as needed, but they're not doing that right now. Even though those units are affordable, just because that is what the market is has set for those units. We also have Mallinckrodt in the park. I think everybody knows where that is. Large building just on Ridge, just north of Lake Avenue. 81 condo units. It's a building for individuals 55 and above. And part of the negotiation in that building was that there would be set aside for affordable housing units. So 12 of those units, so 15% of that building, are affordable. So wanted to talk about some more recent developments in Wilmette and how they progressed or didn't around the discussion of affordability. We talked about Mallinckrodt in the park, so you know about that one. There's 12 affordable units in that property. There's the Residence of Wilmette, which is the building on Green Bay Road where the Ford dealership property had been for a number of years, and that was vacant for quite some time. The history on that site is a little complex. The Ford dealership obviously left. There were a number of proposals for use of that property that were not in line with what the village wanted to see. They opted to purchase that land. So the village owned that land for a number of years, waiting until we came out of the recession and there was development interest in that property. That came a few years back. And the residents of Wilmette put forward a proposal to do a rental building at that property. The village, after lots of negotiation, came to an agreement with the developers of residents of Wilmette that they would make in lieu of providing affordable units in that property, that they would make a contribution to Housing Our Own. Just a reminder, Housing Our Own is that housing assistance nonprofit that we discussed earlier. So lots of discussion at the time about whether that was, well, at the time and now, about whether that was the right choice, but that is what happened. The contribution was made to Housing Our Own. There's the Artist Memory Care Facility that came around about 2 years ago. I'm sure you're following the construction on Ridge Road where the old Ridge Road shopping plaza was located. Memory care facility, so not a traditional apartment complex, housing assisted, it's more than assisted living, but supported housing. Again, contribution was made to Housing Our Own in lieu of affordable units in that property as well. Another property on Greenleaf, kind of near where the Greenleaf, just east of the train tracks. There's a new multi-family property at that location. It's been there for 2 or 3 years, I believe. There are 14 units in that property and there are no affordable units in that property. And I bring this up because that building was built as of right, meaning that the zoning for that building complied with the existing zoning for that parcel. So the developer did not need to go to the village to ask for any kind of variance or permission to build that building. So there was the village did not have the ability to require affordable units in that particular property. So I wanted to point that out. The negotiations around units and donations and so forth are happening when that developer is asking for something different than what that parcel of land allows you to build. Cleveland Place, a project that is about to begin construction. It's in the old American Legion property on Wilmette, just west of Ridge, right behind the artist building. I'm sure many of you remember this went on for a number of years. There was a lot of discussion about that property, a lot of people on different sides of the issue about whether that was the appropriate use for that site. The village board actually unanimously approved the plan for that property put forth by a nonprofit housing development organization called Housing Opportunity for Development. That building will provide 16 units of affordable housing. So all 16 will be affordable. They have received financing from various sources that will require long-term affordability of those units. Optima project, right at Central and Wilmette, where the International Bank is located right now. This building will be 109 units. Again, lots of discussion about affordable components of this building. The agreement that was reached with the developer and the village on this property was that the developer would provide a $1.6 million contribution to the village of Wilmette upon receiving their construction permits. That would be used to support affordable housing throughout Wilmette. So these 14 units that are being proposed will not be at the Optima property. They will be in various parts of Wilmette, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like in a second. So in the recent past, there have been 295 new units of housing in Wilmette that have generated on-site or not, 42 units of housing. So I thought I'd go a little deeper into Cleveland Place and then Optima, because those are more recent, and I think there's some opportunities here to talk about with both of these projects. Again, Housing Opportunity Development Corporation is the developer of the Cleveland Place project at the American Legion site. It'll be 16 units of affordable housing. They've received all of the funding from the state and from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that they need to begin that project. They've secured their building permits from the village, and construction is set to begin. You'll see that building come down probably in the next month. They expect to begin construction this fall. They'll be having, so I think it'll probably be virtual. They'll be having a virtual groundbreaking, and I'll make sure to share that with your group in case any of you are interested in participating and learning more about that project directly from the developers. But this is a schematic of what that project will look like. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question about that one.
Sure.
I noticed that most of the affordable housing units in Wilmette are for seniors or people with disabilities. Is that the same here at Cleveland?
No, this building does not have an age restriction. There are, I think it's 2 of the units will be set aside for veterans, but the other units they'll have some 2-bedroom units in here. There's not specifically for seniors. So this is actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I should have said that. This is our first project in Wilmette that is available for a non-senior population with units.
The only other one I was wondering about was the Village Green Atrium. Those condos, can those be purchased by anybody, or does
No,
that?
I'm sorry, seniors.
Oh, the Village Green Atrium is condos for seniors only.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the only one so far. Okay.
This is the only one so far. This is our first project that has a larger part of the population that could live in this building. And again, it has a number of 2 bedrooms as well. Yeah.
I have a related question. What is Wilmette's zoning requirement for affordable housing?
Well, so I'm not sure. I'm gonna try to answer your question, but I may not be understanding it. So interrupt me if I'm not following. So we have different parts of Wilmette that are zoned for multifamily or single family, and we'll kind of describe what you can build as far as number of floors and height and density. We don't really have zoning for affordable housing per se, but if you go to the village with a plan that requires a number of variances, you might be put it, for example, Cleveland Place went to the Village's Plan Commission. They required something called a planned unit development, a PUD. By asking for this PUD, that opened up a process of negotiation with the village. And in the village's zoning code, specifically around PUDs, there are a number of things that the village has put in the zoning code that they prioritize, that if you as a developer include in your project, your PUD application would be looked upon more favorably. And one of those specific components in our zoning ordinance around PUDs is providing affordable housing.
Gotcha, thank you. It's for example, this place here that we're looking at here on the slide, the developer is not required for 16 units of affordable housing, but if they do set aside some units, whatever percentage, they would look more favorably for getting their construction approved.
Correct. There's a number of things in that zoning ordinance around PUDs that a developer could offer. And oftentimes, in order to get this approval, they'll offer multiple of them. It could be the provision of affordable housing. There are a number of environmental things that a developer might offer that the village looks favorably on around, water absorption and systems and that sort of thing. So affordable housing is absolutely one of those criteria.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to veer off a little bit. The right around the time of the Mallinckrodt development, so this was, I think, about 2004, the village of Wilmette did an affordable housing plan. That plan suggested that the village should require all new developments in the village of Wilmette to include 15% affordable housing in all of the developments. That is an affordable housing plan we have. It was never codified with the village. So it is guidance, not policy, if that makes sense. So Cindy will talk a little more later about the Housing Commission and ways that we can codify a commitment that our village has put forward in this affordable housing plan, which we have not done yet. So I think I'll talk a little bit about Optima Place, because that leads into the Housing Commission that we'll talk about in a moment. So Optima Place, as we spoke earlier, a building on Central and Green Bay Road, where the International Bank is currently, 109 unit property. It went through what I was talking about before, this planned unit development process with the village. They offered a number of different things to the village in their PUD request. They'll have a plaza with art, parking that will be accessible to people who will shop in the village center. They have some environmental components of the development, and they offered to make a donation, $1.6 million donation to the village of Wilmette to support affordable housing throughout the village. They did not offer to provide those units on site. Again, lots of people on different sides of that issue, but what was approved was this $1.6 million donation to the village of Wilmette, which the developer will make to the village. The suggestion by the developer that the village of Wilmette has given every indication they will do is to provide that funding to a nonprofit organization called Community Partners for Affordable Housing. They go by the acronym CPAH. CPAH is based in Lake County. They're a very well-respected housing organization working in the northern suburbs of Chicago. CPAH intends to use that donation to leverage additional private funding from individuals that they have as donors, including one individual here in Wilmette who has committed that they will provide some funding to go along with this $1.6 million donation. They will also use this donation to leverage a tool that the state of Illinois has called the Illinois Affordable Housing Tax Credit. This is a tool that's been around for about 15 years or so in the state of Illinois, that donations of either land or capital that support affordable housing generate a state tax credit, which has a value in the market. So CPAH can take that credit and sell it. So they might get, I don't know what the market is today, but they might get about, let's say they get about 90 cents on the dollar. So that will bring in some additional funding. In addition, they hope to get funding from Cook County that will provide some rental subsidies. So they have sort of a very complex formula of different resources that will come in and leverage this $1.6 million donation to support affordable housing in Wilmette. So they'll take all of that funding and have developed a plan that they believe will result in 14 units of affordable housing in various parts of Wilmette, both rental housing, so housing that CPAH will own and they will rent to individuals to live in Wilmette, as well as for sale units. So the for sale units that CPAH will generate will come about by the creation of a land trust for the village of Wilmette, which is I'm particularly excited about, because I think this is, for a place like Wilmette, this is a tool that we can really use going forward. So I'm going to quickly tell you what a land trust is. Land trust is a tool to support affordable housing that is really effective in high income areas, as well as areas that see rapid increases in housing costs. So how it works is usually that you have an entity, a mission-based entity, usually it's a nonprofit, that purchases the land that a home is located on. So they own the land. And then the homeowner purchases the house that sits on the land. And then the nonprofit entity, the land trust, provides a lease to that home buyer, that homeowner on that land. It's a long-term lease, it's usually 99 years. So that's how the affordability is maintained, that the homeowner is just owns the house and the nonprofit owns the land. So that's what keeps the affordable nature of the property there. So the land trust then determines a formula for the resale of that property that allows the homeowner to obviously build equity, because that's what's really how one builds wealth in our country, is home ownership. So definitely want to make sure people are able to achieve equity in their homes, but they limit the equity. So that's worked into the arrangements with the homeowner, that when they go to sell, that there's a restriction, usually based on inflation, as to what they can sell that property at. Then it's transitioned to a new homeowner. The land trust continues to own that land, and a new homeowner assumes a similar arrangement where they're purchasing the house at this affordable price, and it keeps going in perpetuity. So it's an excellent tool to maintain long-term affordability in a high-income area or a rapidly appreciating area. So CPAH's intent is for some of these 14 units to go into a land trust. So we will have this tool available going forward, which is something that I find particularly exciting. And that land trust usually has a local advisory board that would include community residents or representatives from the village that would help kind of manage that land trust, make decisions about where properties are purchased and so forth. So
Do the people buying the home that would be on the land trust, are there requirements? Do they have income requirements?
yes, there would be
Only
income
available to people who fall in a certain income range.
Yes, absolutely. And when they would go to sell those units, similar restrictions. Yeah. So I think that, Cindy, that might be my last slide. Yes. So I know that was a lot of information. We could stop here for questions or go into boards and commissions, whatever people prefer. But sounds like you should go, Cindy.
I think going on sounds like a good idea, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And what I did want to highlight before we just jump in here, the timeliness of this conversation in relation to where the village is in terms of things it is working on. This Tuesday's village board meeting, for anybody who wants like a deeper or a more complete like history on both of these topics, this Tuesday's board meeting, they are both formally approving the final PUD that Caroline mentioned for Optima. So in that board meeting's packet of information is a lot of recent historical context for what has been approved. So there's a lot of information there. And then similarly, they are approving the recommendations for the evolution of the boards and commissions. So there's like 100 pages of context from all the meetings over the past several months. So this one meeting this week, if anybody is interested in looking at more detail, it's all in one packet on the village website for this Tuesday's board meeting. So, so while Caroline was talking about the affordable housing and kind of the work that's been underway. I think the context for the boards and commissions, particularly the ones that you're interested in here, we're at a transitional point. There's been a lot of work done over the last several months, and now it's poised to kind of be reinvigorated. So for the people on this call who are interested in this topic, this is a good time to start paying attention if you haven't been, because they're actually looking to staff these commissions as well. So I will make an appeal for the village in terms of, as you kind of hear what's needed, either if you're interested in serving this way, or if you know of people who could serve in these capacities. So the Wilmette Village has 12 or 13 boards and commissions that are served by about 70 residents or so who volunteer and then are appointed by the village president. And here you see the list of all the different boards and commissions that currently exist, and we're going to focus a little bit on the Housing and Human Relations Commission. So previously, before this summer, the Housing Commission, which Caroline gave some reference to, it primarily had served to administer this housing assistance program that Caroline referenced. And when the housing assistance program transitioned into Housing Our Own Wilmette, the commission did not really have any active projects because those would be chartered by the village board. And so while there may have been residents willing to serve on the commission with a philosophical intent, let's say, to address affordable housing, there wasn't an active charter from the village to do this work, and the commission just was idle for several years recently. And the Human Relations Commission was created, about 10 years ago when the village consolidated a number of commissions. And at that point, their primary projects kind of resulted in two components, which were kind of identifying the Wilmette Person of the Year and a Black History Month context. And again, this commission has not met in the past several years as well. So just to bring kind of from that history back to where we are now, as Caroline mentioned, the consideration in this past winter and spring of the Optima PUD, that really heightened community awareness of the current state of the affordable housing plan that Caroline referenced, which set some targets but didn't necessarily have teeth. And it prompted a lot of community interest in what was happening with the Housing Commission and how could we be more forceful in pursuing and addressing the need for affordable housing. So in the winter and spring, the awareness was heightened. People were showing up at meetings to talk about this topic, and Caroline referenced kind of the sides of the discussion about particularly what was happening with Optima and affordable housing within the building or outside the building, et cetera. And at that same time, in March of this year, the administration committee, which is a subcommittee made up of some of the village board trustees, they were set to review boards and commissions writ large. That was delayed due to COVID, preventing them from meeting and other priorities. So while that was teed up in the spring, nothing happened. And so then if you think about what was happening locally with affordable housing, and then in the spring and early summer where there was nation and community-wide, civil unrest and issues around social justice surfacing, it prompted, community outreach to the village board to consider and recharter the Housing Commission and also the Human Relations Commission. So with that, during this summer, the administration committee held 4 meetings to discuss boards and commissions broadly, as well as very specifically these 2 commissions. And there was substantial community engagement in this process. The committee chair did outreach to people in the community who had raised these concerns. Groups like the League of Women Voters and other groups reached out to their networks, in the community at large to raise awareness that these meetings were happening. There was regular engagement with the public. At the meetings, people participated in the public comment, sent emails, and it was clear through these meetings that there really was review and consideration of the resident suggestions. And which I think resulted in a result that people across the community felt good about. So the recommendations that were made from the committee, so this is the administration committee, again, a subset of the village board trustees, have made to the village board that there is a statement of a goal to fill the boards and commissions with a diverse mix of residents. There's an articulated new specific set of functions for the Housing Commission, a new mission and purpose and focus for the Human Relations Commission, clarity on kind of membership, term limits, lengths, qualifications, et cetera, and some adjustments that were made to the appointment and selection process. So the diversity commitment that the village has made, this is within the context of there are specific skill sets that the village does look for in certain commissions, but they've articulated an overriding statement around diversity. So you can read that here, including but not limited to races, different races, ethnicities, religions, genders, sexual orientations, ages, and socioeconomic differences. I'll just say again that there is a process by which people submit their desire to serve, and that's called the Talent Bank Questionnaire, which is on the village website if people are interested. The Housing Commission, as they reviewed it, the Housing Commission's mission is staying the same. I think the work they will do to achieve the mission has evolved. So the role of the Housing Commission is to present to the President and the Board of Trustees recommendations for alleviation of the shortage of decent, safe, and reasonably affordable housing for the elderly and low and moderate income persons, including but not limited to the study and development of housing alternatives and housing requirements. And where they will be focusing is, so the commission will be working on the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan, and importantly, redoing the comprehensive plan is in the budget for 2021 for the village of Wilmette. The last comprehensive plan, I believe, was done in 2000, so it's needed, and this Housing Commission reestablishment is timely to bring a focus to the need for affordable housing in the comprehensive plan. This commission will, as Caroline was speaking to earlier, will be working with and monitoring the community land trust, doing some public education regarding fair housing regulations. There was a lot of discussion this summer as the administration committee was going through this work, and also I think with some of the kind of offshoot local community groups, recognizing that locally people do not understand the history that has created a dearth of affordable housing in Wilmette. I mean, going back to restrictive covenants or redlining or what has happened that has created the situation. So there's a desire to educate the public on that with obviously the implicit intention that as more people are educated and realize what has happened to create the situation, more people will be in favor of rectifying the situation. They'll be doing a housing needs assessment to kind of update kind of in a sense, some of the facts and figures that Caroline was talking about how much of our housing stock is affordable and what's needed. They will be receiving updates from Housing Our Own to understand what's happening there. Monitoring the sales at the Village Green. Caroline referenced kind of the need to keep that affordable and understanding where that stands and if the market shift has changed such that the village needs to intercede. They'll be looking at ways to preserve existing affordable housing and where can we increase it. Again, working to encourage developers to include affordable units. There was some sense as this process was moving forward that the village is perhaps reactive, right? As Carolina was referencing, when somebody wants some variances, then they come to the village board, and then part of what they can do to receive approval of those variances is put forth, some affordable housing options. There was, a group of people who have a sense that, perhaps the village could be more proactive in trying to identify either developments that may come up or opportunities for looking for developers who would have an affordable housing focus. As I mentioned, some of these commissions have qualifications that they're looking for. So obviously the Housing Commission would like to be staffed with some people who have expertise in affordable housing or real estate development, the component parts that would be necessary to make kind of legal and effective housing decisions. So that's where the Housing Commission currently stands. And as I mentioned, these recommendations were presented to the village board 2 weeks ago, and the village board kind of all nodded along and gave their kind of verbal consent to it. The formal approval is this Tuesday. On the Human Relations Commission, they had not really had like a mission statement before, so they spent some time crafting what the mission is for this commission, which you can then read on the left. But the overarching point is fostering and promoting an inclusive community across all of these kind of cohorts or aspects of residents who live in the community. And their first task is going to be kind of doing some more community engagement to understand what's needed, and then put together a work plan for the village board to address. And the areas that will kind of be focused on, and I've left this page this way with some of the added language that's in italics and the eliminated language with the strike throughs, because this just, for your understanding, is the example of how the community participated in this conversation. There were, as I mentioned, people who showed up at these meetings to provide feedback and had perspectives on some of the language choices, as well as some of the objectives. And as you can see here by what I've included, this was how the purpose evolved based on the community's input. So, focusing on promoting the well-being of all members, supporting all segments of the population. And I can, speak to some of this in crossing out the word minorities and including the descriptors that are included here. This was important to people because minorities obviously it has a connotation attached to it. And really it's trying to make sure that the village is inclusive of all cohorts of people, not simply, categorizing entire groups of population in terms of minority. Serving as an advocate, educator, communicator, being a point of contact for the community. This other point here around justice and equity, I would imagine that this group of people on the call here understand the difference between equality and equity, but that was a key point out to the village board to make sure that this is about ensuring equity, so people have the resources that are needed, not just everybody, quote unquote, being treated the same. That was edifying, I think, for the village board trustees. And then there was some inclusion as well from, and now I forgot to look back at the name of the, Gail Schechter had shared some human rights organization content for the village board, and they captured that as well in that last statement here around anticipating, preparing for and relieving community tensions arising from intergroup conflict. So this commission has a lot to take on. This is all, in a sense, really brand new for the commission to address. And here, the qualifications. So again, looking for a diverse mix of residents with kind of maybe special consideration being given to trying to have, people who either are disabled or have family members who are disabled, understand how to promote diversity and cultural understanding, understand how to work with youth-oriented services, the veteran population, legal understanding, as well as historical understanding. In terms of the commission, the number and term limits, and again, I'll mention again, they are staffing these two commissions from scratch and looking to fill these commissions by the end of the year. So the Housing Commission, they're looking for 7 members. And the Human Relations Commission, they're looking for 9 members, and 2 of those will be students. So they're looking to include 2 high school students on an ongoing basis for this commission. And then you'll see how they're planning to kind of stagger these appointments so they can, staff the commission and then have the ability to have some rotating, people moving in and out, if you will. So they are looking to do, there is enhanced recruitment and outreach efforts, and similar to kind of what we're sharing here, I think to the extent that you have outreach into the community and can share that what the village is looking for, their website does have all of this information. So spreading the word about what they're looking to staff would be tremendously helpful, I'm sure. And I think that, just the last point here, just to call out the way the process works is our village president does appoint people to these commissions. And that had been a part of the conversation to date in terms of that process. And I think what the village board has committed to is just working to ensure that more people on the village board have, in a sense, vetted or added their points of view to the process by which somebody is chosen to be on these commissions. And I think that so this is just a slide as we reflected, we in the league, having been working on this for the past couple of years, some of the things that we were most pleased to see. So some of the things that we think are maybe some of the key accomplishments in evolution here is, the clear statement to fill these commissions with a diverse mix of residents. Clearly the reinstatement of the Housing Commission with a purpose and scope and oversight that's needed for the village, a succinct, clear, and necessary purpose for the Human Relations Commission, increased transparency in the talent bank questionnaire selection process, term limits, and then embed rewarding volunteerism and communicating the importance of that in our community. So as I mentioned, where we're going from here, the village board voiced their support for these recommendations in their October 13th meeting. They will formally approve them at the October 27th meeting. Public awareness and recruitment efforts are underway. And again, please consider applying or recommending friends for these boards and commissions. I guess I can share the presentation ultimately if that's helpful. I mean, these are live links that are in the document, but the village, the village website, as well as our League of Women Voters website, has information if people are interested in these commissions. So now I guess you have questions, comments?
Thank you very much for that informative discussion there. Thinking back several slides back about the Housing Commission, the goal is to increase the number of affordable housing units. I was wondering, does Wilmette or maybe the surrounding neighborhoods, villages have a SMART goal for the number of affordable housing units they'd like to see?
Wilmette does not have a goal like that. I'm not sure. I think that part of Cindy was talking about the comprehensive plan process that will hopefully embark on next year across the village, that all indications are we'll have a very robust housing section that hopefully the Housing Commission will be actively engaged in shaping. And now I'm talking about my personal goal. My personal goal is that housing plan, that housing chapter has a very firm commitment that the village has agreed to, that is codified as a process where we say X number of units of new developments, or we're working towards X percentage of units in our village. We do not currently have that now. Other municipalities, Evanston, Highland Park, to name 2, even Lake Forest have what is called inclusionary zoning ordinances, where they will include those sorts of measurable mandates like X percentage of new buildings need to be have units that are affordable. So again, just speaking personally, I hope that we come out of this with something like that.
And just to tag on to that again, maybe I keep going back to the same point. You know, as the commission is staffed and the commission does work, the commission also has meetings that are public, right? And so again, people expressing their points of view and what they would like the commission to have as an outcome is certainly a place where community members can have some input, whether you can commit to being on the commission or whether you have some thoughts and perspectives. I guess a lot of this, I would just be encouraging public and community engagement with these commissions as they get going.
Back to Caroline, doesn't the state of Illinois have, I don't know whether it's a mandate or a guideline for percentage of affordable housing in a community. Can you tell us that?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes, the state of Illinois, under a law called the Illinois Affordable Housing Appeals Act, has guidance. And the guidance is that municipalities should be aiming towards 15% of their housing stock being affordable. It's guidance. Unfortunately, when the state, obviously, I mean, you can probably guess, when the state passed this act years ago, there was lots of back and forth, and it was, there's no carrot or stick to a municipality in meeting that goal. One of the things the state does ask is that if your municipality does not meet that threshold, and as you know, Wilmette does not meet that threshold, you are asked to provide a plan to the state for how you are going to meet that threshold, which is honestly originally how we originally did the first affordable housing plan. It was in response to, I take that back. The village would not say it was in response to that, but it was around the same time. Wilmette has taken the position, a number of other municipalities have taken a similar position, that as a home rule community, we are not, we are not beholden to that law, that we don't have to provide that plan to the state. So we have continuously, and most recently last year, sent our old plan to the state and said, this is what we're still operating under.
Okay, thank you. And then Cindy, I had one thing to clarify about that I hope you can clarify. In terms of serving on the human relations or the housing commissions, I assume that one of the goals is, particularly in terms of housing, to be able to house people who work in the village. That's one of the things, at least that I've read, that would be a desirable thing, that people who work for, that people who work in the village would be able to live in the village. Okay, so, but as I read these, I don't know, again, whether these are guidelines or whether this is going to be a law or a rule. Can people who do not live in the village, who are not residents of the village, but work in the village or have some major interest in the future of this, in the present and the future of this village, serve on these commissions?
I think you need to be a resident to work on the commissions, to serve on these commissions. You need to be a resident. And I think that because we had that conversation very specifically around the high school students, people were talking about, could they go to a high school that's not local? And of course they could go to a high school that's not local, but they need to be residents. I believe you need to be a resident to serve on the commission. That said,
the like structural issues of a problem like this is like, oh, we want to be more diverse and have more diverse people on the commission, but you have to live here to be on the commission.
Yes,
but
there's a little bit of
live here, so yeah.
Right, there's a little bit of that chicken and egg, which and there was a lot of, there was discussion during the process where the desire for diversity, or talking about being reflective of our community, but then recognizing that our community is not very diverse. So actually these commissions kind of do reflect our community, if you will. But that being said, I do think that the interest in what these commissions have been chartered to do and the stated objective of seeking more diversity, again, I think people on the commission and community residents interested in where the commission's outcome is to continue to push them in that way, right? When we talk about being a more inclusive community, some of the language that's used in the purpose, there were discussions about what that would mean, right? So being inclusive, to your point, of people who live here, trying to be more welcoming of kind of ethnic cohorts of people that maybe do not currently feel welcome. What do we need to do to ensure that? So I think there is, or my belief is that there are people who are committed to trying to work towards an outcome that would result in a more diverse community. So.
Well, just maybe you can't answer this. Do you think that a person who meets all of the qualifications and who is an important member of the workforce in this community would be able to serve under some kind of an exception? Or am I asking
I don't,
that you can't answer?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, and again, maybe some of this is my increasing understanding of, you know, how to work with our government bodies. You as a resident or ask that question, you know, I mean, serve up the question to the committee, right? And at least you'll get an answer, you know, to the specific question, but also reinforcing your hope that an outcome for the work of these commissions is to enable and create a more socioeconomic, ethnically diverse, et cetera, racially diverse community. So.
Thanks.
That's such an intriguing issue, Anne. Like, I love that you brought that, because that's just like, oh, like, of course, we're going to keep just like cycling and doing the same thing if we don't ever have the people who aren't, it's like the whole question of like, who's not at the table? Oh, the people who we want to be at the table that we're targeting aren't even at the planning table.
Right.
You know,
well,
it's like, oh, of course we're going to. So it's like, yeah, it was a really interesting observation. And like, how could we work around the, you know, if you can change the system that allows for people to be on the commission, that's great. And then also, if not, like, how can the commission work around that? Like, how can the commission have like basically like a team of people who aren't on the commission, but who they're accountable to and they're in constant like communication with, you know?
Right. Well, so two, you know, again, just two thoughts that I have on this topic. So, so one is being more active in recruiting people. So we may not have a lot, but we do have some residents in the community who work in the community, right? There are teachers who teach in Wilmette, who live in Wilmette, et cetera. So, so what do we need? What needs to happen from a recruitment standpoint to find some of these people to encourage them to participate, right? So it's kind of a recruiting effort. And I think I saw that also play out in some of the conversations over the summer. You know, there's, in this case, there was one gentleman who has lived in Wilmette for a long time, an African-American gentleman, and through encouraging him to participate in these discussions, you know, I think they are now really hoping that he will apply to be on the commission. And he indicated that, you know, for living here for whatever it is, 15, 20 years or so, he's never felt that comfortable, you know, in the community, putting his voice out there. But, you know, this process, I think, is maybe, you know, trying to give him a platform, if you will. So I think some of it is recruiting, finding the people that we feel like is needed. And then, you know, one of their initial purposes, they talk about, like, I guess what I'm calling kind of some discovery, right? So doing some work to understand what the community thinks is needed. So again, through that process, hopefully, they will unearth some of these points that, you know, you're raising too, right? Which is, what do we need to do to make this a more welcoming community? How do people who work in this community but don't live in this community feel about being in the community? So I think there's opportunity as they do some discovery to understand the broad set of needs.
I love the idea of doing the listening. We call it listening, the what you're calling the kind of the discovery phase. I think there can be a temptation to be like, well, let's talk to the people who already live here to find out what they think is needed. And it's like, well, that's fine, but that's, in my opinion, not really who we should be listening to. We should be listening to the people who aren't here and find out from them what it is that is like the barrier to them being here. So I love the idea of doing the listening with the people who work here but don't live here and finding out what the barriers are for them, or doing the listening of people who have tried or want to move here but don't. You know, the population to start with, I guess, is people who are already here in some capacity, who work here but can't live here. Great.
But you guys have already, you have done such terrific work to get it, even to get where things, where they are now. So as a resident of Wilmette, I really appreciate the work that, particularly the work that the League of Women Voters has done to, in terms of reviving these things, getting them, pushing them at the village level. You know, and explaining it to us. It's really terrific. And, you know, we're very appreciative. I am as a resident. Thank you.
Very exciting.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All this stuff is very exciting. Thank you, as Anne said, for Carolyn and Cindy and your whole team, your multiple teams, all your work on this is really great.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
And I'll be looking for some of your names and faces at the meetings, the board meetings coming up, right? Because now
We'll be there pushing with you.
that's
Thank
right,
you.
rubber hits the road. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.